before we get going, I want to give a big thank you to everyone who helped out with this and made it all happen. So thank you to Steven for his tuning. He always does a great job. Let me come use the dyno, and obviously it takes a lot of time doing all this kind of stuff and with real random problems, which you'll see. He just always does a good job and is super helpful on that aspect. I also want to thank Jamie for all his help with the engine work and, guide me on how to do sleeves. I've never done sleeves before. I've never done anything like that. Shout out to my coworkers, Andy and Devin. They also helped me out a ton with getting the sleeves going and the machine work and what to do here and what to do there. And it was a lot of time. Big shout out to Indy Specialty. That's obviously where I did all the machine work and did all the crazy stuff like that. Big thanks to Joe. Huge help with the turbos. Hooked me up with a lot of great parts. He's the best when it comes to buying parts for. And then obviously I want to thank my dad because he helped me a ton out here. I mean, we went through just so much getting this thing going. And obviously, as any car build goes, it just escalates extremely fast as you start tearing stuff apart and you're like, well, I'm going to change this and I'm going to change that. And the next thing you know, it's a 7-month build. So that's pretty much how this did. And I actually am pretty impressed with it being only 7 months for how much we changed. And just seems like everything kind of takes a long time, especially as the builds get more in depth. But yeah, so let's get rolling with the video. What's up, everyone? So we are back with another video. And this time we're going to the dyno, finally. It was kind of a spur of the moment deal. I hit up Steven. He happened to be free. I kind of was planning on not doing anything this week because I had a wedding going on and just a whole lot of stuff happening. So I'm like, we'll just maybe wait until next week. But, it didn't really matter because the car was ready to go and I had some free time. So I'm like, well, yeah, let's go hit up the dyno and see what this thing does and try to make some horsepower. So everything was all pretty good in the car. I've been doing a lot of test driving and working on it and making sure it was good. And I did quite a bit of just street tuning on my own, just getting, all low RPM stuff figured out. So I figured it was a good time and let's go make some horsepower and see what this thing's got in it. So we'll kick it right off right there. Okay, so there, in that first clip, you've seen we were just kind of running it through the RPMs and just getting a feel for where the VE wanted to be. And like I said, I'd worked on some of that, so I don't know how close it was. He never told me, but the car ran pretty good, so it didn't seem like he spent a whole lot of time there, but he got all that stuff figured out. So now we move on to the second video. So you've seen it blew a big flame out. So we made a couple runs and it did this a couple times, and we just couldn't figure out what the deal was. So then we were kind of talking and I was like, we need to go and check the ignition parameters. So I'm gonna flip the camera around and kind of show you what I had going on. So here was what I had for the ignition parameters. And I got all this information off of Facebook. So, and the reason that I had it set up, so if you go into your system parameters and then ignition, I had it set up as custom. That's because I'm on smart coils. So I wanted to have right down in here the coil dwell table. But so that's why I set it up like this. And all this other stuff I got from someone who said all this stuff worked on Facebook. I know it sounds dumb, but that other table that I showed you was the only way that I knew how to adjust the dwell if you had coils. So that is how we did it. So we made a couple pulls like this. I, took the sensors out and cleaned them and retightened them down and checked all the plugs and did all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, plugs on the connectors for the sensors. And there was just no reason that it should have been misfiring or just losing crank signal at 6,200 RPMs. So if I go into here, I can show you exactly what it was doing. So you can see just right there, that is a big loss of ignition. It just doesn't know what it's doing, so it just makes a big old pop. So it was doing that right at about 6,200 RPMs, and that was only like 5 pounds of boost. So obviously we weren't getting very far. So after I told Steven about that, he told me another alternative to what we could do, and that was set it back into just your standard Ford Coyote locked cams, non-TIVCT. And then we went into this advanced tables and we put it all the way at the end, so it's way out of the way. And that is a dwell time offset. So we looked at one of the other data logs to see what the coil dwell was, and this is just how we offset it to make it, so it run higher dwell. So then we go on to the next pull, see if that fixes it. So there you see, that fixed it. So that made me super happy because I had read some stuff online about people having problems with ignition stuff in Coyotes and this wheel and that sensor and that rear cover and these cams and this particular cam sensor and all kinds of stuff. And so that just always makes you really nervous, and it's never fun when it's doing stuff like that. So the fact that revved out and everything was good made me very happy. So we revved it to about 7,500 that time. It was on 6.5 pounds of boost. And I don't remember the exact numbers up until we get to the end, but judging by the fuel, and I think from my memory, it made like 520 or something like that. 520 or 500, somewhere around there is what it made for horsepower. So pretty good. I was pretty happy with that. And so then we were pretty happy there. It doesn't really get run on the 6.5 pound mark. That was no dome pressure. That's just all wastegate. So we decided to just throw 10 on the dome and let her fly. So here's that one. So there you've seen 10 on the dome. So we revved it out to 7,800 RPMs. Looked like it made around 12-ish pounds boost. And we were on around 20 degrees of timing. So keep in mind all these, I didn't video the whole time. The car was pretty loud, so I would just plug my ears quite a bit. But we made quite a few pulls actually, just because it was pretty responsive to timing actually. So this one, we were up to 21 degrees. And that was on around, like I said, 12 pounds-ish. Went to like 7,800 RPMs. And judging by the fuel, it probably made around 700-ish, 750. I don't exactly remember. I should get him to send me all that stuff. You'll see why the night ended kind of abruptly in a little bit. But yeah, so once again, pretty good power. Things seemed to be pretty responsive to timing. It was running really good. Wasn't doing anything weird. Only thing that was weird that happened was it blew one of the, VCT plugs, one of these guys. It blew one of these guys out the valve cover, and that might have been a little later in the day. I didn't get that one on video, but I had to pull the valve cover to put it back on and duct tape it on and all this stuff, so that was kind of dumb. These things, I don't know, they don't really fit nearly as good as a guy would like them to, and then I heard that you can flip the seals around and put them in backwards, and then they'll put the seal in backwards, and then they'll stay much better. But it didn't really fit the seal that well from the back, so it was kind of, I don't know, it was just weird. I didn't really like it that much, and I've since fixed that issue. Also, another issue that was why that happened was these breather holes that are in like it'd be like the baffling plate on there are super small. So I just drilled those out and made them significantly bigger. So hopefully that alleviates our crankcase pressure issue. And then I did add a sensor to it. So hopefully that I can at least monitor it then and we'll know exactly what the deal was. But yeah, like I said, probably around 700-ish, 12 pounds of boost. That was pretty nice. Things sounding really good. Seems like it runs great. Everything was going good. So bumper up to 20 on the dome. there you go, guys. That was 20 on the dome. And you've seen kind of the smoke and all that stuff. That was probably our third pull on 20 pounds, on 20 on the dome. And that was right after them VCT things blew out. So, of course, there was oil on everything in it because it did make a decent little mess. But on that particular pull, we had just put fresh plugs in it. And then, obviously, I had the valve cover off and put them stupid things back in and duct taped them on and all that good stuff. And it made 23.5 pounds of boost. We're on 19 degrees of timing. And we've revved it out to 7,500-ish. So I'll still cut it off a little short. But I know for a fact there on 23.5 PSI, it made 1,276 horsepower. So I was super jacked on that. I mean, that's a pretty solid number. If you remember from my stock bottom end 5.3 video, it made, I want to say it was like 1253, and that was on 33 or 32 PSI. So we're already making the same power on 10 less pounds of boost. So that was extremely promising to me. I was super pumped about it. Everything in that pull was really, really nice. Boost was smooth, pretty much made like mid 22s and then crept up into the low to mid 23s once we got like up above like 6,800 RPM. So yeah, that was a really good one. And like I said, we'd been playing with timing quite a bit, and it's weird, and we'll see it again later in the video, but as the thing got more power into it, it seemed to get more timing friendly, which was very bizarre to me, but that's just the way it went. So we'll keep on keeping on, and I'll show you another little clip here of just all what was going on in the shop while we were there. It was pretty wild. So you can see there, they're actually digging a new trench, and they're gonna bury the dyno and put it in that other building over there. Nothing wrong with where it is, except for it's very difficult to get cars like mine that don't turn very well and have spools in the rear end. It's pretty tricky to get them in there. So they're actually gonna move the dyno into that other room there. So that'll be pretty nice. Then it's pretty much just back straight in and you're good to go. So they were working on that, and we were dynoing the car, and everyone's kind of hanging out and chilling. It was super fun. So there, we made, like I said, 1276, great run. And then next was another 10 on the dome and keep chipping away at things. So I'll show you that video. So there you go. That was 30 pounds on the dome. So we ended up doing 4 pulls there. And the first pull, it made 29.3 pounds boost. It was on 16 degrees of timing. We revved it to 8,200-ish. And it made 1376. So that was pretty good. I was pretty happy with that. And we were kind of sitting around thinking, we're like, well, let's throw another 2 degrees at it and just see what happens. So I don't have any of this stuff on video, just kind of because I was hanging out, and that video that you've seen was actually the last one that I took. So, but I'll tell you what it made in a little bit. So it made 1376 on that, and that was 16 degrees of timing. So then we decided, let's bump it up and go 2 more degrees. So same dome pressure, and we went 2 degrees more timing. We revved it to 8,400 RPMs, and it made about, actually dropped in boost a little bit. It was like low 29s, like right around 29.1, 29.2-ish. Revved it to 8,460, and we were on 18 degrees, and it made, I believe it made 1455 is what it made there. So that was nice. It just seen 75 horsepower on 2 degrees. So we were definitely pretty jacked up about that. So then we went for 1 more degree, and that was the pull that you've seen. And it was, we revved it to 8,700-ish, and that was running about 28.7, 28.6. And even when we added this degree and it was at 1455, Steve and I were talking, and he's like, I will be incredibly impressed if it makes over 1,500 on less than 30 pounds. And I was like, I would be too. That would be pretty awesome. And so we did that run, 20.5 degrees, 28.5 pounds of boost, and it made 1,504. So I was super jacked about that. And everything looked super good. You did see that little puff of smoke come out the passenger side turbo. And earlier in the day, we did have one run where it just had a little like boost dip in the graph, and we weren't really sure about that. I believe that was one of the pulls where it was in like the 1,200 range. So that was interesting. And I actually spun both turbos after it did that little boost dip, and it was fine. And so then it had this little puff of smoke, and I'm like, that's interesting. And we were kind of talking, I haven't really beat on the car much, that the rings might still be seating up quite a bit. So there was also that to think about. And you're on the dyno, so there's just kind of a lot of stuff going on. So then we decided that since it keeps picking up power, that was another 50 just per 1 degree. I'm like, well, let's just go one more and see if it likes it at all. So it was all clean living up until about 7,300 RPMs, and it actually had lost some more boost. It was only on 26 pounds, and then it made a horrible noise, and the turbo wheel actually shot out of the exhaust pipe and hit the ceiling and landed on the floor. And I didn't see that part. All I seen was something else go flying in the other direction, and I initially thought, well, the motor just blew up. I'm like, that's super cool. And it just sounded weird, and stuff went flying and smoke come out, and it's a lot to process in the matter of a couple seconds. So I crawl under the car like immediately looking at things, and I didn't see any oil or no holes in the block or nothing like that. So I'm like, well, that's kind of a good sign, I guess. And then one of the other guys that was there was like, what is this? And sure enough, there was the turbo wheel just sitting on the floor. I'll drop some pictures of it right here. So that was absolutely insane. I was completely blown away, and I don't know, it was kind of a weird feeling because I absolutely was not happy that it happened, but I was so happy that it was only the turbo. It's a very weird explanation when there's destruction like that, but it wasn't the most expensive thing. It was kind of something that I was like, well, that ain't that bad. So, and I did know that they had a warranty on them. So I'm like, okay, not the absolute end of the world. So once again, though, they're oilless turbos, so that was super great because the engine didn't get introduced any like junk from the bearings of the turbos, depositing oil back into the engine or anything like that. And then luckily it was all the exhaust side. The exhaust wheel exploded out, and then it looked like, I don't know, something in the shaft must have made the little torpedo that's on the end of those turbos break off, and that's what I seen go flying the other direction. So, and I pulled the turbos off and everything, and there's not a piece of anything in the intercooler, nothing at all. And there was no dents, dings, scuffs on the compressor side outlet going towards the intercooler or anything. So luckily nothing exited the turbo from that side, and we actually did find the little torpedo on the floor a few days later. So all pieces are accounted for on the intake side, and obviously on the exhaust, everything just boop right out the pipe. So it was super crazy. Steven had never had that happen on his dyno before. Obviously, I've never even seen that happen in person before, so that was kind of something, and it definitely sucked. So pretty much I didn't get any time to film right after all that happened because I drove the car and the trailer and everything. It sounded really weird with no exhaust wheel. It was just unbelievably loud on that side. But drove the car and the trailer. Our dyno day was done. We made 1,504 on the previous pull, and actually on the pull where the turbo went out, the turbo wheel blew out at 7,300 RPMs. It was making like 26 pounds of boost, and it still made 1,494. So it may not have been done on that dome level area yet. But pretty impressive nonetheless. I was really happy with just where the thing was for power and how much it really liked boost. It seemed to really like the more boost, the more timing we got into it. I mean, we were at 21 degrees when the turbo wheel blew out. So as far as explanations of why that happened, I really have no idea. I mean, some could say it was from the ignition problems and the backfire, but cars backfire and pop and bang on the two steps and stuff like that all the time. So why would that, if the turbo wheel's that sensitive, that's not good. That little boost dip, was that something going on? Or the oil or the little smoke that come out of that one side pipe on the pole that made 1500, was that something to do with it? I really don't know. It's all kind of new territory. So like I said, I come home, pulled the turbos off. I bought them through DeVito Racing Compound. Joe DeVito, he's a buddy of mine, runs a shop out in North Dakota. I bought them from him, and he actually runs the same turbos on his car. So I messaged him about it. Actually, he messaged me about it. He heard it pretty quick, and he just told me to send him a bunch of pictures, and he'd handle it. So I got the turbos off, and they were shipped out within 12 hours of all that happening. So they got to comp, and took a little bit to hear back from them, but they're just sending me 2 brand spanking new ones. So that's super nice. Awesome customer service on their part, and huge shout out to Joe for getting with them and, telling them the whole deal and getting it all figured out. So I am getting 2 new turbos. It sucks because they're here a little later than I'd like it to be. I was really hoping to make it out to a test day that's actually going on this weekend, but that's all right. We'll just save it all for next year. As far as the dyno goes, we got enough information to where I don't have to go back. It looks like it would have run out of injector at probably like in the 1800 to 1850 range, and I'm sure it would have made that pretty easily. So like I said, the thing was really rocking and rolling. It was doing good. So from there on out, I came back and made some updates on the car. Basically, obviously turbos went, and then I pulled the valve covers off, and I added this pressure sensor, and then I actually welded in all of the I made my own VCT plugs and then just welded them in. So you can see there, the look wasn't quite, that is the look I was going for, but I was hoping it would be a little bit smoother. I kind of wanted them to look like they were like cast into the valve cover, and it just didn't quite turn out as mint as I wanted it to be, but that's all right. The valve covers needed a fresh coat of paint because I had done some mods to them since then. So it was nice to respray them and get them all looking nice again. And obviously I had to take both of them off and clean them, and everything looked super good underneath the valve cover. So that made me incredibly happy. And then other thing I did was I cut the oil filter open, and I was kind of nervous because there was actually some stuff in there a little bit. And I talked with Jamie about it, and I talked with Joe about it, and Jamie said that on a motor like this, when you sleeve them and you do all this stuff, he's like, it don't matter how good you can clean and how much brushing of the oil passages you do and how much this and how much that, there's always going to be stuff that gets from the engine, that's from the machining process, that gets in the oil and eventually gets caught up in the filter. And if you really think about it, I did a bunch of oil changes, but they're all back to back because of the whole water thing. So that definitely could have introduced some shit into the oil. And so this was really its first real oil change with a significant amount of abuse on it. And obviously other than the very first oil change we did shortly after firing it up. So I do have the filter sitting here, and I'll do my best to show you some stuff that was in it. So here is the filter. You can see kind of some of the stuff that I'm talking about. All of this is non-magnetic. I went through every single groove on here with a magnet looking for stuff, and none of it was magnetic. So that tells me it more than likely is all of chips, and especially since we had the whole water thing, I'm sure there was some chips involved in that process as well. So, and then also talking with Joe, his motors come from Fast Forward, and the guys at Fast Forward said that on a block that has that much machining done, this is totally normal. And Joe's filter looked this same way, and they told him to run it, and he's been having good luck. There was no brass, no copper, no nothing like that in the oil, so I'm really just not concerned about it. We're gonna send it again and do another change at some point here shortly and just see what it looks like. So that pretty much wraps that up. The car's sitting pretty naked right now. No turbos, no bumper, but it is what it is. So it's been a good opportunity to go back through and nut and bolt a whole bunch of things. I checked all the front plates and the mid plate and the bell housing bolts and kind of went through the alternator drive stuff and made sure everything was tight and checked the transmission lines and just was checking a whole bunch of stuff, and everything's seems to be in tip-top shape. So other than that, other than the turbo deal, it was a really good day in the dyno. I was really happy with what the car made. It just runs really, really good. It makes fantastic oil pressure, like 113 through every rip. So that's pretty awesome. And it's always kind of hard to tell in the dyno, but it seems like the converter's going to be pretty decent in this thing. I mean, you know, it could use this chater change or something down the road. We're never going to know until we make it out to the racetrack. But just from the way it acted on the dyno, it seemed to be pretty good. It acted a lot like the other one. It's very interesting, though. Like, I don't know. I was just really impressed with how the old Coyote did. It just seemed to, I don't know if it's in the cams or what, but as you pumped more airflow to this thing, it just seemed to get happier and happier and happier. But like I said, we didn't play with timing a whole lot down low because how much do you ever really run the thing on 10 pounds competitively? Obviously, if we did that, we would have, but that isn't really what goes on, of course, as most of you probably know. A pretty successful day, though. It was fun. Had a good time down there. I always think that going to the dyno is just the best thing ever because you can just find any little random problem. Like that oil, that VCT plug, that would have been really dumb if that would have happened at the racetrack, especially if it had been relatively early in the run because it had just been pissing oil everywhere, and that's a real good potential for fire. So didn't have any of that. I took the valve covers off. I modified those holes. So that fixed all that. And basically, if any of you Coyote guys are out there, there's a little rubber cap over in two spots on it would be like the baffle plate. If you pull that rubber cap off, there's 3 holes that are probably like an 1/8 inch to 3/16 in diameter. And all I did was I took a 5/8 drill bit and just drilled out the center hole there and made 2 5/8 holes in that plate basically. Then obviously put a nice chamfer on it and deburred it so it looked good and there's no junk around in there. And I did that on both sides. So 5/8 is what the hole measures for a -16 fitting. And I figured if you put 2 of them, there's more than enough room for all that stuff to get out of the crankcase and get its way heading towards the breather. So that should alleviate that problem. And obviously, hopefully the new turbos fix everything. I did hear back from them and they never really said what happened. I don't know if it was just a fluke or if there was something wrong, but they're sending me 2 new ones. So we'll go back at it and try them again. Hopefully we have better luck this time, but I'm just very happy that they honored their warranty and I didn't have to pay anything for them because they aren't cheap. I mean, nothing on these race cars anymore is really relatively cheap. So it was nice to have them respond well and get me taken care of. So hopefully, maybe if there's another test day locally, we can get out this year, but otherwise she'll probably be waiting until next year, which definitely blows, but just kind of is what it is. But super impressed with the car. It just did great. I'm very happy with it. It seems to be like it's just ready to rock and roll, and we should be able to go out and have a really fun year with it. But 1,504 horsepower. Pretty stoked about that. And it was on less than 30 pounds, so that's super cool. Coyote's a badass engine. It is weird, I will say, the Coyote, it just doesn't sound like it's working very hard. Like the LS, you could tell when you put more boost to it. Like it seemed like it grunted a little more. This one, it just kind of, I don't know, it free revs. Maybe it's a twin turbo thing versus a big single, but it was just, I thought that was interesting. So hope you enjoyed this video. We'll catch you later.